As you said in the previous episode, India should engage with the Taliban. I said possibly India should see what is the best possible approach, long term approach. So one thing is that India will never be able to write the checks as large as the Chinese. The Taliban will be totally under the control of China, isn't it? For example, if you give $100 million to the Taliban and say coordinate with us to break Pakistan, then China may give $250 million to go anti-India. So what can we do in this sort of situation? So what you are essentially asking, Krishna, is who has the most leverage on the Taliban? What does the Taliban, what is it that influences the Taliban? So to understand who has the most leverage and influence over the Taliban, we have to understand what does the Taliban want? What does it want in the next 1 year? What does it want to achieve in the next 5 years? What does it want to achieve in the next 10 years? If we understand that, then we can understand what forms of leverage can be used on the Taliban and who has the most leverage. So the Taliban, first of all, wants to secure the country. They want to stamp out all opposition, political, military, etc., opposition to them within the territory of Afghanistan. So the Northern Alliance in the Panjshir Valley and the northern regions of Afghanistan, that is a threat for them. It still exists. They are still fighting. So that is one thing. So they would want to stamp this opposition out. Secondly, they will want to establish a legitimate government and gain international recognition as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. Then they want to rebuild the country, impose their form of law, Sharia law, whatever they call it, on the country, and they want to rule it forever, essentially. And once they have a sufficiently strong hold on the country, then their agenda is the Pashtun nationalist agenda of reunifying the northwest frontier province of Pakistan with Afghanistan. So they have a long term territorial dispute with Pakistan. So these are the long term objectives of the Taliban. And therefore, it is clear that in the long term, the Taliban will be a threat for Pakistan. Now, the Chinese don't care about Pakistan. The Chinese want to expand their sphere of influence. They want to mine Afghanistan. They want to extract the lithium, the various minerals, the copper, and whatnot, which Afghanistan has plenty of. So they will work with the Taliban to do that. And of course, their checkbook is larger than India's checkbook. Now the question is, does the Taliban see the see China as a reliable long-term partner? The Taliban, as we know, they are an Islamist regime. They are imposing Sharia law, and they see all other Islamic regions of the world as their brothers to some extent, and they know what the Chinese are doing in East Turkestan, in the Xinjiang region, to the Uyghur people. And therefore, the Taliban will not have warm feelings towards China. They will certainly ally with China in the short term in exchange for international recognition and legitimacy in the international arena for their government. So the Chinese may be able to may be willing to offer them that if the Taliban allows China to engage in the country in mining operations and maybe to use the country as a transit route for the Belt and Road project. So the Taliban will definitely need the Chinese for some time. So in that short duration of time, in the next 5 years, maybe next 10 years, the Chinese will have a significant amount of leverage over the Taliban. The Pakistani leverage will dwindle down very fast. The Russians will ally with the Chinese, so the Russians and Chinese will have the most leverage. India will not have that much leverage, maybe in the next 10 years. But eventually, as the Taliban, if they are able to last 10 years, then they will definitely start targeting the Pakistani occupied territory, which is the Pashtun homeland. And they will want to reintegrate it with Afghanistan. At that point in time, the Chinese may not want a new civil war to happen in this region because they have infrastructure projects and all that. That's when the Taliban may end up coming into conflict with the Chinese, that is when India can play its cards, and that is when India may have significantly more leverage with the Afghanistan Taliban regime if it lasts that long. So that is the long term geopolitical play. What is the role of America in this? That again is a big question, right? The Americans do not want to see the Chinese expand their influence in the world in the long duration. So when such a thing happens, if the Taliban goes anti China and anti Pakistan, then India will have a role to play in this, maybe a significant role, and maybe the Americans may also help the Taliban at that point in time. So there is always a long term objective. What we are seeing right now is a day to day, week to week kind of unfolding of events. But the real game is long term, it is decade by decade. So the real question is, what do the Americans want in the next decade, in the next 2 decades? What do the Chinese want in the next 2 decades? What does the Taliban want? What does India want? So it is in the long term that the real game is played. So in the long term, India may actually have more leverage than China over the Taliban if the Taliban last that long.